I have an announcement.
Thank you.
I have an announcement.
Gail has an announcement.
Announcement.
Okay, Gail, go ahead.
I don't know if everyone knows, but the Special Olympics, I just turned on Channel 7. They start today. And if you haven't ever watched them, I urge you to watch them. They are absolutely fantastic. These kids are like the bravest things on earth. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, so when Linda joined, she said everybody gets double credit for attending today because it's a holiday weekend. We've got a lot of stuff happening, like the beautiful weather, the Special Olympics, tomorrow's Father's Day, and Monday is Juneteenth. And of course, it's Pride Month all month long. So welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining. As you know, we're completely online again today, but we will be having our only in-person potluck picnic for the summer at Ponderosa Park next month on July 15th. So hope you all can attend that. And we're also planning for hybrid meetings going forward after that. We did have the one hybrid meeting in April, and that was successful, and we plan to do that again, probably at the El Dorado Clubhouse again. All right, and
Thank you.
yeah, so I just want to acknowledge elected officials, former elected officials, commissioners, and as always, if I miss you, please speak up. So we have Councilmember Sell, who is also going to be one of our speakers. We have Rod Sinks, former mayor of Cupertino and recently appointed to FUHSD Board of Trustees. Let's see, we have former council member and Vice Mayor Tara Martinilius. We have a number of commissioners. So we've got planning commissioners, Mike Cerrone, Martin Pine, we've got BPAC commissioner.
Carol Weiss.
Yes, and Carol, yes, thank you. Almost a quorum here, got to be careful. All right, BPAC commissioners Leah Melman, Charlene Liu, Tim
I'm the
Lee.
chairperson, actually. I'm not just the commissioner.
Thank you for pointing that out. Let's see. Other commissioners, who am I missing?
Scott Duncan.
Housing.
Great.
Yep.
thank you. Myself, I'm a sustainability commission chair.
Charlene Yu is also on the BPAC,
Yes,
and so is Tim Wee.
yes.
So we have a quorum, unfortunately.
Oh, you only have 6 members or something, or 5 members?
7 members.
Yeah. No quorum. Just
No, okay. One more, we'll have a quorum.
Right,
Of
gotta be careful.
If it counts, I'm on the county commission.
course
Yes,
it counts.
Citizens Advisory Commission on Elections.
Thank you. And yes, Naomi Nakano Matsumoto, FUHSD School Board Trustee. All right.
You have Peggy Brewster, who's the leader of C
Yes.
and also on foundation.
Not elected yet, but thank you.
And also on the executive board of the Democratic Club.
Yes.
Yes. With a number of our board members online too. Okay. Why don't we go ahead and get started? We've got, I'm really excited to welcome our 2 speakers today on the topic of the Lehigh cement plant and quarry in Cupertino. So Linda Sell and Rod Sinks will be presenting, and we'll do Q&A afterwards. So you can put your questions in the chat, or you can reserve them for the end of the presentation. All right, so I'll just introduce the two speakers, and then I have the presentation. Do you want me to display it? Is that how you want it to work?
We can do that if you give us permission.
Okay. Mike, why don't you give, you want,
They should be, both be,
Yep, I see that. Yep. got
okay,
it.
great, cool. Okay, so
Go ahead, Rod, and do it.
Great. Okay, so here we go. I guess I'm glad to see that the Democratic Party has infiltrated so many parts of government in Sunnyvale. That's a good thing. And at least one of you is standing up for elections process in Santa Clara County. It seems like our democracy is in peril, so we are grateful for all your service. Linda and I have worked together for a long, long time, and I hope Linda doesn't mind me telling the story, but we got together over concerns about the Lehigh cement plant in about 2009 and 10, and we were not happy with the county's determination at the time that the operator had wide-ranging vested rights on properties that county staff had found inappropriate to be called vested, and we filed a lawsuit. We eventually lost. You know, local agencies have a lot of are given a lot of discretion by the courts, and so what we did succeed in doing is raising awareness, which I think has led us to a future which we're going to talk about today. And so we go back that far. And I've known Linda as maybe one of the most effective organizers of campaigns for schools or congressperson or whomever that I've ever met. And so I've been privileged to work with her and call her a friend for a long, long time. And I'm so grateful that she finally decided to step up to public office herself. And I'm thrilled that she's now on the Sunnyvale City Council, and we get to be colleagues, if you will, in agencies that both serve residents in Silicon Valley. So that's my brief introduction.
Yeah, my brief introduction is that I first came to this issue because I was a parent and I've been volunteering for the schools. And then I was getting an award for something. And then a council member came up to me and said, do parents care about mercury in the air? And I go, yeah, parents care about mercury in the air. And then I got involved in this, and Rod and I and other community members co-founded a nonprofit to elevate this issue, because this impacts the air, impacts our health, our kids' health, and everything like that. So that's how I got involved. And so for the last 10 years, been working on this issue. So I'm really honored that the club wants to listen to this issue. So thank you to everyone about this, being here and asking Rod and I to speak.
I think we can dive right in. I'm going to take the beginning, and Linda is going to come in after a couple slides. I think that's what we decided, right, Linda?
Yep.
So this dot, which is called Heidelberg Materials, is where this plant is located. If you look at an aerial map, you'll see, or fly over in a plane, you'll see a hole about a mile wide. And it's, I think, nearly as deep at this point. The pit has nearly reached the end of its life. You know, the only way to keep digging is to build completely straight walls, which is not feasible, or widen the pit, which is also not feasible given their entitlements. And so this plant has existed for about 100 years on this site. And we were successful some 10 years ago in getting the Air District to require that they put up big stacks, a big stack 300 feet high, to scrub the pollution that had been exiting locally around the plant for decades. And since about the 80s, when they took down a previous set of stacks that they had. So these stacks while they scrubbed out particulate matter and other things from the air we all breathe that were being emitted from this plant, there is still pollution coming out of the stacks in the form of gases that would then condense. So that's called condensable particulate matter, things that are in gaseous form till they come out, and above the stack, they cool and combine, and then that turns into stuff in the air we breathe, and still a very significant cause for concern for human health in the Bay Area. So we've done a lot with mercury, we've done a lot with certain forms of particulate matter, but this problem remained. And in fact, what happens at 300 feet is then largely dependent on meteorology. So if the air swims around and can't really escape the mountains that you see here in green, right? The air sort of swirls around and hangs over us. And in smoggy days, if you look up toward Mount Hamilton, you can see that pollution, or if you look down from the hills above us here, you can see that pollution. The cement plant was a major cause of that pollution that's known as particulate matter, condensable particulate matter, and affected everybody that lives in the area you see on this map and beyond. So that's the first thing. I served I represented the 15 cities of Santa Clara County on the Bay Area Air Quality Management Board for about 6 years. And I served in the last year as chair of the 24-member body that oversees air quality and carbon emissions to some degree in some parts of that domain across the 9-county Bay Area. So what happened during the pandemic is really an interesting, noteworthy story. Just prior to the pandemic, we had been working for years on controlling the condensable particulate matter coming out of the stack. It would have required a lot of process changes, so a substantial amount of capital improvement and then ongoing process improvement, injecting lime to reduce one of the two molecules that comes together to form that condensable particulate matter. We finally, through 2016-17, we're negotiating this. And then in 2018, it seemed like we had an agreement. We couldn't talk about it at all until everybody had signed. The plant itself, the cement company, signing on behalf of all the Lehigh cement plants across the US, thought about this long and hard after we thought we had a deal. So we signed like in the fall of 2018, and they held on thinking, gosh, maybe we'll get a better deal out of this Trump administration. We're not sure we want to do this. Trump, of course, was president during this time. The EPA was resisting, but was certainly subject to political pressure, and Trump had managed to reverse a number of important environmental laws. You know, California's right to control emission standards for automobiles, mileage standards. And we were a party to this agreement at the Air District. So what we had done was we negotiated a very special amendment that applied not to all the cement plants, but just to ours, to reduce this condensable particulate matter. So this would have gotten rid of the most of the rest of the pollution. But then the pandemic came along. You remember that, March 2020? In April 2020, Lehigh decided to cease operation of this kiln. Now, kiln is a big round thing. I think it's 16 or 20 feet in diameter. That's a big cylindrical thing that heats the limestone that goes in and some other trace minerals to produce clinker at the other end. There's a chemical transformation that emits lots of CO2 and transforms the limestone into the cement, which then gets mixed with sand and aggregate to produce cement, concrete, right? And that process is the thing that creates all the pollution. Well, they ceased operation of this kiln in April 2020. And we think the pandemic was probably the overwhelming factor here. But having chosen never to reopen, we believe could have well been because of this rule, this new requirement that we placed on condensable particulate matter as a result of this agreement. And seeing no hope apparently for changing the outcome for the better, maybe fearing a Democratic administration coming in, they finally did sign the agreement in the spring of 2019. So the kiln was the largest stationary source of greenhouse gases in the county, interestingly, the CO2. And we think all of this work helped bring Lehigh to the negotiating table of the county. The county back in 2010, I would say, was more or less in the pocket of Lehigh. We had a supervisor then that led the group in supporting much wider vested rights than the county staff recommended at the time. But and they've also pointed out that there have been a whole series of violations from many, many agencies, federal agencies, state agencies over the last 10 years, some 2,100 violations over 10 years. Now, every industrial facility has violations, but some of these are really extraordinary. For example, while we have 8 cement plants in California, this was the only one in this period to receive a high priority violation of the Clean Air Act, that by the EPA. They did some pretty egregious things. They decided they were just going to bulldoze a road from their quarry over a mountaintop to the neighboring Stevens Creek quarry to be able to exchange materials. It was business for them. And they figured that there would be political pressure to let this road stand. Because after all, if they weren't able to use this road, then they'd have to use our own roads, the public roads, right? And indeed, there was a lot of outcry over the truck traffic, and there still is on Foothill Boulevard, Foothill Expressway leading up to the reservoir. So they bulldozed this road by telling no one in advance. We had to discover this on our own, and they didn't do any CEQA. They did no permits. They destroyed 35 trees by this bulldozing that they did. So there have been plenty of closed sessions at the county and also in the city of Cupertino, because they probably didn't intend to do this, but a little corner of that road dipped into Cupertino. So they had to contend with the council, not fans of this under any of the years that I served. They've had extensive sediment pollution in Permanente Creek. If you have a really deep pit, water tends to percolate through the soil, bringing with it both mercury and selenium. Particularly the selenium was a problem for the wildlife in the creek, the steelhead. This was the matter of that was prosecuted by the Sierra Club successfully to eliminate the selenium. They were required to install a reverse osmosis filter to get rid of that stuff. And also a $2.5 million settlement with the EPA and the Regional Water Quality Control Board over these water emissions. So just a lot of stuff that said to all of us, they were rather flaunting our rules and the rules of all these agencies that we count on to protect us.
Yeah, and so Lehigh has had a chronic history of notices of violations, settlements, and consent degrees related to the air, land, and water. So if you could scroll to slide 9 and 10, Rod. you can see some of
Let's see, 9, there's 9.
9. So you can see that Sierra Club had litigation, which resulted in for them to have a treatment plant, and also litigation, which they would restore Permanente Creek, which won't happen until the cement plant ceases operation. That won't happen till later. And then the water board, they had judgments, $5 million for water treatment plants and civil penalties. And then if you go to the next slide, complying with the EPA requirements. So before, when I first started working on this, there were no stacks, and all the pollution would just be 32 vents that were close to the ground. And close to the ground means like the surrounding neighborhoods would, and the surrounding communities would get larger amounts of pollution. So these were toxic pollutants. These were, within a few miles of neighborhoods, like neighborhoods and schools. And Cupertino Union School District is one of the largest school districts in Northern California, has 20 schools, and parts of it includes like Sunnyvale, Los Altos, Saratoga, Santa Clara, Cupertino, San Jose. So and the Sunnyvale is within 5 miles of the cement plant is all of Sunnyvale. So and there were notices of violations related to county and cities, like Rod was saying, with the road, and then with the EPA, with the air district, and all of that. But so there were all these laws from the outside, and notices of violations and consent decrees. So those were all not good, that the company was dealing with those, but in a way it was showing that there was oversight. So Rod got on the air district, and on the air district, Rod was able to champion like legislation at the air district, which became law. And then that enabled the Board of Supervisors to keep moving forward in a positive direction on the Lehigh issue. So it's kind of like there's an outside oversight, and then there's the inside oversight that was happening. So that was all good. And I wanted to also go to slide, the next slide, 14 through 20. I wanted to elaborate more on that. So this slide shows the Lehigh cement plant. So it's one of the cement, it's in Cupertino, but it's in the vicinity of, the heart of Silicon Valley. All of Sunnyvale is within 5 miles of this. So you can see like that it's a chronic, it's a high priority violators. In other years past, it's all of those, like in the last 3 years, it's been a high priority violator. And so it's one of the 8 cement plants in California. I also have the same information, if you scroll for the other slides, of the other 7 cement plants. And you can see the other cement plants in California, the other 7, they're not high priority violators of the Clean Air Act, and they have a lot. 6 of them have, 100 to 1,000 times less population than this Lehigh cement plant. So you can see it has 2 things going against it. It's the older plant, so it doesn't have to abide by the newest clean air technologies, and it is in a large population. So if it is creating pollutants and toxic pollutants, then that impacts a lot more people. And
So interestingly, this is, while it's said to be in Cupertino, it's actually in the unincorporated county just to the west of the city of Cupertino. And we'll get back to that later, but it's important because that means that the agency that oversees this, the primary agency, while there are all these federal agencies in the air district and so forth, and water districts and water control boards and whatnot, the primary agency through which all this stuff is supposed to work is the County of Santa Clara. They're called the lead agency to regulate this facility. And you could well say that when we started this quest, Linda, that They were persuaded by lobbyists and high-powered lawyers for Lehigh to basically do their bidding. And that situation, fortunately, has changed.
Yeah, when we started on this, it was, Lehigh had been there for like, hundreds of years, 100 years. And they were just a fixture in the community. So there was no question about what they were doing in terms of the environment. And so it started out as a little grassroots band of neighbors that formed a nonprofit and elevated this issue, went to make public comment at city meetings. Some of the city officials weren't eager to do much about this. Some of the county officials at that time weren't eager to do much about this. Then we elected Rod. Rod got elected to the Cupertino City Council. And he's really good about bringing people around, talking to other city council members, talking to the people at the county, talking to people at the agency, and building up a coalition and being elected to serve on the Air District, which oversees like 9 counties. And then eventually becoming the chair of the Air District, which oversees 9 counties. So the Lehigh cement plant, you say like, well, there are other polluters in the district. Well, the Lehigh cement plant at one point, it was one of the most toxic polluters, equated with the Richmond refinery. So in our district of like 9 counties, it would be, one of the top polluters. And so if we were able to have laws that regulate the Lehigh cement plant, that means a lot of other toxic polluters would be helped too. So the good that we were doing in this local area helped other communities which did not have the capabilities to, look into these issues, but the good regulations we put into here help those other communities. So that was good. And the other thing, so as this issue started getting more visibility, more acknowledgement, Supervisor Joe Smidian in 2013 came onto the county, and this Lehigh cement plant is in his district. So if you go to, I guess when he came on board, the community was really alerted to this pollution issue, especially in Cupertino, especially the cities around Cupertino, parts of Los Altos Hills, and the part of Sunnyvale. So he decided to have more oversight of the cement plant. And so he came on board in 2013 and started having town halls, started having more oversight, and all that was good. So it was to speed forward to 2019, and 2019, it was thought that, the cement plant has been there, 200-acre open pit mine has been there for 100 years, and maybe it's going to be exhausted, and maybe they'd look to reclaiming it. But in 2019, Lehigh submitted a new reclamation plan. And reclamation plan is a plan for how the company plans to operate in the next few years, and eventually how they plan to reclaim the facility. So in that 2019 plan, instead of them looking at, this pit mine is exhausted and we're going to look at reclaiming it, instead, the 2019 reclamation plan was more about expanding the mine operation, which is on 3,500 acres. And for a lay person, this means that instead of people hoping that the cement plant would go into ending operations and going into reclamation, they were indicated that they wanted to do more mining, and the plan talked about how they wanted to expand and do more mining at that. So that would be surface mining, because it took 100 years to get into the pit. So it would be surface mining. So that would be in the heart of Silicon Valley. So if we go to slide number
I'm on 5 for you to speak to what they had proposed with regard to filling the existing pit.
Yeah. So what they talked about was filling the pit. They talked about creating a new pit and also filling the new pit. And filling the new pit, they talked about before their old reclamation plan that they had was that they took the material out of the ground and then they would eventually put it back into the pit. But instead, they talked about trucking in daily 666 truck loads per day of trucks for 30 years. So imagine that, like on our roads every day, 666 trucks, going on the highway, wherever they kind of are around, bringing trucks. So that was like unimaginable. And then also they had, let me see, on slide number 11 for 13.
Uh-huh. Okay, I'll go there.
So they also talked about in the current plan they have, which was the reclamation for 2012, it was that they would restore Permanente Creek, which has had a lot of pollutants in it from the Lehigh cement plant. But they, in the new plan 2019, it was delaying it for 10 years. And then next slide. And then here it was, here's the pit. And so previously, their current plan said that they would have conveyor belts and put the material back in from on site. And then in the 2019 plan, it would be 666 trucks daily going to and from the plant, bringing in material to fill in. And then next slide. Back one slide.
Oh, here, sorry.
Yeah,
Here.
okay, this one. And then a third item of what they thought about doing was there's most of Silicon Valley can't see the open pit mine because it's surrounded by hills. But in a certain direction, they suggested taking the hill top down by 100 feet because they might have wanted to, it would help them mine more easily. So they, but the Santa Clara County had, in the current plan, had many years ago had an easement in which the easement protects that hillside from ever being taken down. So Lehigh wanted in this new plan for the Board of Supervisors to give them the right to take the hill down. I think many in the community, like nonprofits, Sierra Club, and other organizations, cities, many cities had letters that were not in support of this. And in 2021, County Supervisor Smithian got the support of his colleagues that they were not in support of some of these things, like taking the hill down. Then in 2022, these were all from a summary of County Supervisor Smithian's town hall from April. So he was just like reflecting on what happened in the past, and I'm just summarizing what he said. So in 2022, he wanted to look at ways to further protect the community. So he asked his colleagues on the county, like, can we look at the next, I asked the county council and the planning department for the county to look in the last 10 years to see how many violations that they've had, and the county council and the planning commission planning department came out with over 2,100 violations, which Rod mentioned before. And so with that, and as many of those, there were a lot of violations, and some were small, but many of them were large violations, such as the air violations, some of them related to the work that Rod and his colleagues did at the Air District and the EPA. And so with all those violations, the county supervisor, Smithian, could ask his colleagues if their permit should be reconsidered. And so their operating permit allows them to operate. It also stipulates in the permit that they should abide by the law. So if you have like a 10-year history of over 2,100 violations, then maybe that brings into question, like, how much are you abiding by the law? So that might give the county grounds to revoke the permit. So they were moving in that direction. And then in November of 2022, as Rod had mentioned, Lehigh made an announcement. They made an announcement that the cement plant had actually been shuttered at the beginning, during the pandemic. And since it's been shuttered, they didn't, in 2022, November, announce that they weren't going to reopen it up. And so County Supervisors Committee has said that his new goal for the future, his previous goal was, and the goal of many, was just that Lehigh needs to follow the law. The County Supervisors Committee and new goal was that he wanted to see 3 things that happened, which he announced at his town hall in April, which one of them is he wanted to see formal agreements, which would put into place that the cement plant would stay closed and that pouring activities would cease, and restoration of the cement plant area quarry would start to occur. So he and the board gave the planning department of the county the instruction to start negotiating with Lehigh towards working on these agreements. So now Rod can take it from here.
So what does a potential deal look like? You know, most negotiations between a government agency and a private party often take place behind closed doors. And so the county personnel that are negotiating with Lehigh knows what's going on, and supervisors are probably generally informed about it, but the rest of us can speculate, and we have to listen carefully to public statements and things that are made. But we believe that a potential deal would consist of these elements: that Lehigh would transfer the property to the county in exchange for one or more of the county assumption of the reclamation plan responsibilities. As we talked a little bit about, every quarry and mine in California has to have an approved reclamation plan under SMARA. I think Lehigh is out of compliance. They're required to be refreshed periodically, and they've been out of compliance for some years because the ones they've submitted have been rejected for various reasons, and there have been lawsuits over this in recent years. So there is a big effort to try to fix this pit and all the land that's been disturbed, which is why SMARA exists. So the county would likely pick up the reclamation responsibilities in this case. The county would be more likely to get it reclaimed properly. We've seen a lot of issues over the years with what they were required to do under their own plans, with where the areas where the clay, the overburden taken out of the hole and not useful as cement, what was done with that. There would be probably a forgiveness of outstanding fines and penalties, we expect. And the county would probably also have to put up money to do all this. These are obviously just negotiating points, right? And then the county would sell off part of the land, perhaps after some reclamation, to, say, a housing developer. And that would finance the purchase, that sale of land. It would help finance reclamation. And it would also get new housing built, right? So these are all goals that the county is generally would be interested in. Notably, labor, when we started our work here, labor was skeptical of me and our organization on the basis of the fact that, you know, we need to build things. You don't support a cement plant here. It has to come from somewhere. What's your problem, right? Are you against construction? And we said, no, but we expect it to be done sustainably, and we expect the pollution issue near a large urban area to be addressed. So interestingly, you know, I know Linda, you've been formative in helping bring labor along to support the idea of the closure of the plant and transfer to the county. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, there was one point in which it looked like their 2019 plan, you know, who knows, maybe it might have passed. But so my friend who's a strategist, she suggested that, why don't you go and get support opposing the 2019 plan from the Democratic Party of the county? And I thought, I'm not sure if they would support it. They are into sustainability. So, and in parallel, one of my friends who might be here, Rhoda Fry, she's been a longtime advocate on this issue. She had friends that were parts of, she had contacts, and through her contacts, through her and I presenting to the labor leaders, we were able to show them that sustainability can be good for the environment, and it also can create jobs. And so she and I presented to them, and they thought it was like, well, for several years, we've been taking apart this environment, you know, and we'd love to be able to put it back together, to put the dirt back in the hole, to make it a beautiful place to be again. And so they were really supportive of that. This reclamation plan is in the plan, but the more we put it off, the more we don't do it, the more we cannot enjoy this. And so they were pretty much on board. I acknowledge my friend Rhoda Fry for doing so much research to convince them and many others about the viability of reclamation.
So at this point, you know, when this was announced in November, there was a testimony from labor, right? Saying we think this is a good thing. They were on board, and that was wonderful and heartening to see. And I think, you know, what they probably understand is Lehigh would drag their feet on doing any reclamation. If the plant wasn't going to reopen anyway, they might as well get on with doing this. And under the county, as I said, there's a plan, you know, God knows how long it's really going to take, but potentially 40 years of good paying union jobs, as they say. Yeah. And so this is now an opportunity for labor rather than something to stand back and oppose. And, you know, what could it look like? You have a hole a mile wide, and you have all of this clay sitting in piles. The west material storage area, the east material storage area. If you fill the pit in part way, you'd still have net on net, right? A lot of material that's been taken out, the limestone and the sand and aggregate that's used to make concrete. But here's a project really in our own backyards that showed how this could be done. This is a much smaller site. The Neary Quarry had been in operation for a long, long time in Los Altos Hills. It was closed in the 1960s. It took a long time for the city of Los Altos Hills, the town of Los Altos Hills, to prepare this and approve plans. But they did so in the late 90s. And this is how this site looks today. You have the old quarry. You can see this to the, in the right side of the picture, and then you have houses on the other side. You have lakes, you have some boating. This is pretty small. This is like 11 acres, and these are big, big homes. But obviously at a larger site, just to the south, you can imagine a community also surrounding a body of water. The soil underneath this pit, we've been told by water experts, really is clay. It's a lot of clay. And so you have a natural capture for the water. And that's also important because of all the history and the selenium and whatnot. There might have to be ongoing remediation efforts, but if you fill the thing up, we don't know, and it really ought to hold thanks to the clay. And it doesn't get down in the aquifer. So that's also something we've learned over time. So that's, I mean, what we wanted, that's the story we wanted to tell you, the promise of what could be here. Now, because this is part of the unincorporated county of Santa Clara, the city of Cupertino would likely get engaged with this because if and this is an if the county were to decide that they wanted to have housing at this location, the county rather isn't in the business of creating residential communities. That's what cities do. And so they would probably require that the city annex this into adjacent city of Cupertino property. So it would become, it would transfer at some point from unincorporated county to be part of the city of Cupertino, and the city would have to, put in improvements and do all the things that cities do better than the county. But I think for housing advocates, there's promise here that this could in fact be remediated and actually turn into something that would serve both recreational and housing goals.
Yeah, and when you consider what we were up against, the community, like in 2010, this was a multinational billion-dollar conglomerate that owned this cement plant. And here we are, a small grassroots group of people. And so, but when you have something so important as health and good leaders in our community who are willing to stand up, then you can do phenomenal things. So.
And what we can't tell you is what exactly will the deal look like at the end, what the land will actually be used for in the end, right? We are doing some extrapolation from what we know, but we are rather assuming that Joe, Supervisor Simidian, would not have gone through all these public announcements if there wasn't some realistic hope of seeing this through to a successful conclusion. That is a negotiation with the owner of the plant, Lehigh. I think at this point, we had talked about this being an hour, and I think we'd love to take questions.
Yeah, so I see that Leah has a question. And
Yeah, so I have two questions actually. Firstly, do you know how much it cost Los Altos Hills to remediate the property, the quarry?
I don't know so much. I think this is all private land, and I think they had to decide to, the landowner had to do something. And once again, right, by selling land for homes, I think they, that was one of the conditions. So I don't believe this fell on city government. Los Altos Hills doesn't exactly have a large industrial tax base.
No, they have a very wealthy single family owner.
Yeah,
by
exactly,
tax.
which is what these houses are. This is like 22 homes, just to be
Yeah.
clear, right?
Yeah.
Like,
So my other question is I'm concerned that if Lehigh gets to walk away, that it ends up being sort of a Superfund site, because that's what it looks like to me in a way. I mean, you're talking about mercury contamination, which is
Mhm.
probably locally, in the ground, since they had those stacks that were not properly filtered for the longest time, selenium, the disturbance in the creek and the groundwater and whatnot. And so my concern is in terms of not only environmental impact, but an overall cost, that it would be more than the county can bear. And, because it's in an unincorporated part, it might fall to intercity bickering, I guess, within the county of like, oh, we don't want to pay for this kind of thing. So,
Well, I think that's why, being able to, the reason that a deal will take a while, among other things, is all of those, all of the costs of really understanding the toxins, the remediation will have to be thoroughly understood by whoever's taken over the land. So if the county could decide to directly have Lehigh sell to a housing developer, and I'm sure a housing developer would want assurances and knowledge of what's going on. We're guessing the county will first take it over, and then it may take a while, right, to do enough remediation so that the thing's truly cleaned up. Just because this property transfers hands does not absolve the county of, if they're the party that owns it, whoever owns it has to do the reclamation.
my concern is more the fact that Lehigh, gets to sort of walk away and wash their hands of the whole thing, even though they've
Yeah,
broken the law,
Yep.
and so it's just, my feeling is that if Lehigh wants to walk away from the remediation, they should actually be required
yeah.
to start a seed fund for the remediation, and that they just don't walk away like scot-free kind of thing.
Well, I'm assuming that there are some very smart people at the county that are party to this negotiation, and should make sure that they are doing a deal that's in the interest of the public, right?
Yeah.
There's
And
certainly value in the land, but at this point, there's not a lot of value in the land unless somehow they can start mining again, and that doesn't seem to be in the cards now. So at this point, it's a mess, and somebody's got to clean it up.
Mhm.
Right. And
And
okay.
you could also relay that to our county supervisor, like Otto Lee, and make him aware of your concerns too.
Right. And will there be any public comment allowable in any part of this process, do you think?
I think it has been on the agenda, and it will be on the agenda in the future. And I think you can get on Joe Smidian's email list and ask that you be put on
Okay.
information about this.
Because there have been periodic public meetings,
Right.
which questions have been entertained and so forth.
Yeah.
And I forgot to thank you guys for presenting this, because I had no idea there was this quarry like within 8 miles of my house. And I always wondered why there was so much, like black dust that accumulated on my windowsills and whatnot. And I always assumed it was from, being between two major freeway things. But now that I think about it, it could be entirely due, a large percentage of this could be due to, the quarrying activities that I
Yeah.
was completely unaware of. And so thank you for opening my eyes to the situation.
Yeah. And
Well,
this, like,
if you're in that little corner of Los Altos where it meets Sunnyvale, where it meets Cupertino out there by Trader Joe's, and you look at that freeway on and off ramp, if you're there for very long, you will see lots and lots of big heavy trucks. They're going to Lehigh, they're going to Stevens Creek Quarry, right? Both of those industrial facilities up near against the reservoir. And yeah, it's a big deal. And the diesel emissions from these trucks.
I
is
was going to
also a
say,
big
who knows
deal.
how many tons of diesel emissions have been dumped into the local atmosphere and stuff.
So now imagine for over 10 hours a day, you have one of these diesel trucks a minute bringing
600
excavation material
trucks
to fill this
per
pit
day,
for 30 years. It's like,
30 years.
listen,
On our
I don't
local
know that
road.
the proposal was serious. It seemed like, please legitimize our private road, and really insane.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll
we'll
let
go
other
to-
people ask questions, but thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Tim, your question?
Oh, yeah, thanks. So I had to find the unmute button there. Wow, this seems like a huge opportunity. Hopefully it'll turn out to be. I know we're like short reservoir space. That seemed like a huge, big hole that you could fill with a lot of water at some point if you had a source of water to get in there.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
one question. And I noticed that, yeah, the quarry in Los Altos Hills by, that's a beautiful bike ride, by the way, by that area. They've got this gate that only bicycles go through. It's really nice to drive through there. It's really pretty. And from your slide, it looks like 30 years for that to finally resolve itself. That's a long time. Probably going to be gone by the time they finish this quarry reclamation here. The other question area I have, so reservoir is one, how likely is that or not, is there's a rail line that goes to that location.
Yep.
And that it would make a beautiful trail through Cupertino. And
Yes,
Cupertino
it would.
rock
Sure
with
would.
trails, all these trails that come to Cupertino and around Cupertino. Has there been any inkling about how much longer that rail line will continue to be operational, or will it?
Well,
Yeah.
honestly, it could be used if you really were trying to bring material in. Bringing it in by rail would make a lot more sense than by truck.
Mhm.
But I think in the fullness of time, once there's a clear plan for how to do this, it would make all the sense in the world to dismantle that rail line. There's really no other purpose for it. It goes all the way through, comes up through Saratoga, sort of perpendicular to Saratoga Road, and then all the way up the west side of Cupertino, and then loops around at the end just south of 280. It would, of course, make an excellent corridor for active transportation, as I think you bike people say.
Yep, I've biked that whole route,
Yeah.
almost all of it, a
Yeah.
number of times. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's it
Yeah.
for my questions. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I should have mentioned it.
Charlene? Charlene, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi,
Okay,
Charlene.
thanks. Yeah. Hi, Rod and Linda. Thank you so much for being our advocates on this issue. I know Linda has been working on it for so long, and you as well, Rod, although I haven't known you as long. But just thank you so much for all these 13 years or so working on it and getting it, because if it weren't for you leading the community, we wouldn't have made this, achieved this much. So my question is, and maybe you answered it in your presentation, but I didn't get it. I was concerned about any toxic seepage that goes into the soil where the cement plant is, and whether there was any concern about that, and if there was going to be any testing and work to try to detoxify it.
Well, I will tell you, I trust the county more than I do Lehigh on this. The Santa Clara Valley Water District, I believe, has done testing to determine if what's going on in that pit with all that selenium and mercury and whatnot has gotten into the aquifer. There's no indication of that. Stevens Creek Reservoir is nearby. There have been likewise concerns there, and there are things you can do to remediate those reservoirs. But fundamentally, my understanding is the basin really has a fine layer of clay that contains the water. So that's the good news. But I'm sure that the county and Valley Water will look at that very carefully as they come up with a plan. At the moment, of course, the pit is open. You can walk right down into it. You can drive down into it. It's quite a walk, I think, but you can go right down into it and you can do that testing. Once it's filled with water, that becomes a little more challenging. So I'm sure it'll get thoroughly tested.
Okay, Crystal, you have a question? And, some of these are just our opinions, and, you can always reach out to your county supervisor, Otto Lee, or contact Joe Smidian, because this is in his district, and ask him the more up-to-date questions.
Yeah,
Hey,
thank you.
Crystal?
Yes, thank you guys so much. This is really insightful, and I do have a few questions, so I'll try to keep them brief. So you mentioned the nonprofit that was started. Is that nonprofit still going, or is it kind of like it's resolved and
Yeah, so the good thing about the nonprofit is that we started about 10 years ago, and we elevated this, and it kind of took a life of its own, and now like Green Foothills is championing it, and the county is actually working on it. And so we decided that maybe it would be better to be an ad hoc group that looked at this. And then we gave the nonprofit to status to organization to Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action, because Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action is also an organization I co-founded, which was kind of a project of Bay Area for Clean Environment, which is the group that was focused on elevating information about this. And so now it has evolved to the nonprofit to be Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action. And so I've been involved in two things over the last 10 years. It's been Lehigh, well, schools, Lehigh, and climate. So that's where it went.
yeah, cool. So I was wondering if we have seen in the data, Bay Area Air Quality Management District monitors, and has monitoring of pollutants all over the Bay Area. And since the cement plant has been shut down beginning in April 2020, have we seen in the data that the pollutants are reduced?
Well, let's see. I'm quite certain if we had done a critical study of this, we would have found it. The air district, as you know, serving 9 counties, is not always focused on answering those kinds of specific questions. And so I had some real concerns about how the air district went about looking at impacted communities when I joined the board, quite frankly. And we'd take these very expensive $1 million trailers and we'd set them up in San Jose, and one in Oakland, and one in San Francisco, and one on the peninsula, and maybe one in Cupertino for a while. But then, we would move some of them around so we could do experiments and things. And we just didn't have, while we had regional monitoring, we didn't really understand the impact of really local air quality. So to answer a question about what Lehigh meant to Cupertino, or what the Richmond refinery meant to the health of the people in Richmond, the Chevron refinery, or the port with all of its diesel drayage trucks to people in West Oakland, were not questions we were equipped to answer. During my tenure, we really began looking very critically at what people were able to do with these $300 monitors that you can buy to look at local air quality. And we teamed up with, in my year as chair, we teamed up with a nonprofit called Acclima, a for-benefit corporation, I guess more accurately, that called Acclima, that has done a lot of work going through every street in the Bay Area multiple times to get a much better profile on sources of pollution. And now they're working nationwide to do hyper-local monitoring. And there's a fascinating story there. And they have data and maps that you can use to drill down on your own neighborhood on the acclima.io website, I think it is. And I think we have made a lot of improvements that now are better positioned to let us answer these questions. We went also up to the state and said, we need more resources to look at highly impacted communities, right? The truth is, your longevity in the Bay Area is quite predictable based on your zip code. So statistically speaking, that can vary quite dramatically, lifespan. And there are, of course, many factors for that, but one is certainly air pollution. So we've nominated what are called AB 617 communities. West Oakland, Richmond were the first of them, to bring additional resources to build capacity of communities that, you know, where people don't have time, they don't have resources to fight, to help them, right, understand and have control over their own clean air plans. And so that's what that money is now being used for. It comes from, in part, I think, from the state's cap and trade funds.
Yeah, great. I'll have one more question and then I'll hand it off. So with respect to these 2,100 violations and all of these fines, so I guess it was pretty clear that the company wasn't really that concerned with clearing their violations or preventing new ones if they just kept getting them over and over. But were they just paying the fines, or was it just kind of like pay to pollute, or were they
For a
not?
long time, the fines were insignificant, inconsequential, or weren't even issued. It's like, you know, government really was, I would say, some of these agencies were rather asleep at the switch. So it took activists in the community to say, hey, let's hold these folks accountable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think
So-
if you look at the profits they've made versus the fines they paid, it is a drop in the bucket for them.
Yeah.
So it's probably for them the cost of doing business.
The county's attitude changed a few years ago, honestly. You know, there was one time when we would go in and try to have these discussions with county planning staff, but it took a new director of planning at the county. And then the tide began to turn when we were able to look more critically at the regulation, first to get the stack up, right? That allowed a lot of the stuff to be filtered, and then propose new condensable particulate matter regulations that started with the stationary source committee of the air district. And then, yeah, we got this baked into this consent decree. That was the best strategy our lawyers had at the time. It took far longer than I would have liked, but, you know, eventually you can move a mountain,
So to speak.
so to speak.
Yeah.
And Rhoda makes a good point. I mean, the other impact here wasn't simply the emissions from the cement. It was also they were burning petroleum coke. This is the junky stuff that's left over after you take out the useful stuff from crude oil. The stuff in the bottom of the barrel, the bottom of the refinery column, is this petroleum coke, and it has nasty stuff in it too, right? So there are a lot of things we had said, how about burning natural gas if you're going to do this, right? But no, you know, we love the heat content in petroleum coke. None of this is very environmentally friendly.
Wow. And kind of hidden from
Yeah.
Yeah, 32 smokestacks, like really near the ground originally 10 years ago. Now, at least there's a giant smokestack 300 feet up, kind of. So, okay, Mike, you have a question?
Yeah. Again, great presentation. But so can you differentiate between pollution from the quarry versus the cement plant? I mean, they're quite different, right? And for
Yeah.
example, I was told if you want to fish in Stevens Creek Reservoir, you can do that, but you can't eat the fish because it will kill you, which I thought was selenium. And I thought that is that is naturally occurring in the soil, but leached out by the water.
Yes, that's correct. It's leached out by the water. So, but what it did, there were surveys of fish population in the creek prior to mining operations. It was a very healthy steelhead habitat. Within a year or two of the starting, the fish died because the selenium couldn't handle it. And this was largely the basis of the Sierra Club suit. contemporaneous with the work we were doing to try to reverse the supervisor's vested rights decision in 2010. And
So
unlike us,
pollution,
Sierra Club, we were collaborating with the attorney, a really terrific guy named Reed Zars, who lives in Montana or Wyoming, and so we'd see him occasionally, and he was good at focusing on the water issues, and eventually was very successful in getting the selenium, a plan to mitigate selenium before us. It just took, all this stuff takes forever.
So is the reclamation relative to the quarry, you know, a lot easier?
Yeah, so the major pollution issue really is from the cement plant, that big kiln. It's operating at very high temperature to perform the chemical transformation. That is the primary source of pollution. But of course, quarrying, right, involves you're exploding rock to peel it away from
Soil.
base. And so there's particulate matter too. That's more localized. And it's pretty hard. We learned at the Air District, it was pretty hard to remediate that, but just other things, other secondary impacts, like when the trucks drive out of a construction site or a cement plant or anything, right? You get track out of the dirt and sand from the facility. So the Air District put in a strict rule requiring that they clean the road twice a day, right? You have these rumble strips to try to shake the dust, the dirt off. They were required to wash their trucks before they left the facility. In other words, they'd load with all the sand and stuff, you know, in a very dusty process, and then they'd be required to wash and then come out through some rumble strips, and then still they had to go clean the street at the entrance to the thing a couple times a day.
Where does that wash go then?
Yeah, where's the water go?
Well, no, they have to capture all of that.
Oh.
Okay, they have to capture all of that. Yep, they're not allowed to put stuff in the storm drain either. Thanks. So
For housing though, for housing, maybe in the vicinity of the quarry, it makes sense, but it seems unlikely or very difficult in the vicinity of the cement plant to ever have housing if it's that polluted.
yeah, so you know, it's one of these things. We have a lot of Silicon Valley facilities that were former industrial sites, and the quality of the cleanup matters, right? It's true for all kinds of parcels of land around us where, we set up a semiconductor plant, or we had an auto repair facility or a gas station. It's true for so many of these sites that somebody didn't do the right thing, or the regulations or enforcement of the regulations at the time led people to do things that have now created problems. There's a site where we created a dog park along Mary Avenue in Cupertino, and there's a sound wall up now, but there didn't used to be. And just the lead from the gasoline in the cars came out of the tailpipes on that on-ramp and put enough lead onto the adjacent property there, where we now have a dog park, that we remediated that before we went forward with that project. So this is something that is done in construction commonly now in Silicon Valley, that you have to really test and do the work that's necessary and then test again.
So how does the Stevens Creek quarry, which is actually very close to Stevens Creek Reservoir, how does that fit in with this? Is that the same owner?
No, it's a different owner. You know, they don't have a kiln. They're basically they're reprocessing old cement and other building materials. So they crush and grind, and they're doing some quarrying themselves. I don't really know so much about them, but you know, it's fundamentally different from the cement plant in that there's no big kiln going there.
And
yeah, they're a major materials handling facility, processing facility.
My last question, can you explain a little more clear the relationship to Rancho San Antonio? I see it's close to it, but what's the discussion about building that up or something?
Well, the Mid-Peninsula, I'm sorry, it's a Mid-Peninsula Regional
Coast.
Open Space District,
Hmm.
which, has jurisdiction over the adjacent land in that beautiful park. And they stood with us to try to contain the pit, prevent it from expanding. They have been a key part and a player in this for the 15 years I've been involved. And they've done really good work to try to help also contain the damage and be smart in negotiation where they traded one thing for another and whatnot. So there have been so many public agencies that once they were woken up, I have to say, I'm pleased that while it's taken a lot of time, lots of factors have converged to put us in a much better and hopeful spot now than we were back in 2010.
Okay, thanks.
And then Crystal, how are we doing on time? I don't want to take up your whole meeting and other things. I
we're
know we have
doing-
one more question, but
Yeah, we're doing fine if you are. I know Rod had something he needed to get to also, but yeah, we're fine on time for.
okay, how are we doing, Rod? Do you need to go?
I'm good.
Okay, so we'll maybe take our
one
last
more
question from Cole.
Hey, you guys. Thanks so much for this. Is just a tremendous amount of work, and it's just incredibly impressive to see what this group of dedicated citizens has accomplished. I just wanted to get a gut feel from you, and I'm happy to take answers from all the folks who've been involved. Roughly speaking, is this because it's kind of confusing to me as a new person to this? Is this a regulatory failure, an oversight failure, a combination? Have we plugged the regulatory holes that we can, or are there still remaining things? The reason I ask is because I could see this as we are maybe reaching or getting close to a resolution or path to resolution on this. I could see this happening again with a lot of other situations. I think some folks in the chat have brought up other situations where we might see something like this. So yeah, I'm just kind of curious as to where else work is needed to prevent something like this from happening in the future, if it is.
Well, I would say the Air District is much better now, and that's partly due to new technology. It's due to new state laws that we lobbied for. The Air District now has hyper-local information. I wish they were a little faster in identifying sources of methane emissions, which they could. So we have a leaky methane system that's endangering our climate. And they have the data, and I'm trying to get them to stop sitting on it, honestly. They've had some management turmoil and whatnot. But I think, it's like most anything else. You have to, you rely on people that are in office who want to do the right thing, and you rely on activists on the outside that are pressing and helping bring community to public meetings to say this is not okay, to write letters, to demand action, and occasionally elect folks who will change the game, right? Who are willing to work to make a difference. And so I see this in most anything, right? Bike lanes in Cupertino, we had big wars over this. It's like you need a lot of people, Tim, you know this, right? You need a lot of people to show up, a lot of students to show up to say, we want the public roadways to be shared by cars and bikes. It's not just okay to say, this is my parking spot in front of my home. And so, what every one of these things ultimately takes is a lot of people standing up for the public good and advocates on the inside who are willing to press and move an agenda forward. So after 10 years of work, I can proudly say, as a new school board member, we now have a trail, a protected bike lane from Monte Vista High School on the west side of Cupertino, all the way across town to Cupertino High School. And I will tell you, it was a hell of a fight to get all of that built through past all those homes. Yeah, thank you, Tim. I know, right? If you want to read, in my view, the worst systemic failure of government in California to actually effectively regulate, there's even a better story for you. It was released, it's about PG&E. It was released by Wall Street Journal reporter Catherine Blunt in August of 2022. It's called California Burning. And I will tell you, that book will really make you think about how not just the management of PG&E through its many presidents, but how the PUC, the governor, the legislature, and the courts have all completely failed to do an effective job of regulating PG&E and turning them into what should have been, in the last bankruptcy, turned into a public agency, quite honestly. There's money involved, right? There's the politics involved. But for those of you who are in part of the political process or want to be engaged in some way, this book is really deserving of your study. I learned a lot. I knew some of it, right? I was involved in forming SVCE. So with Jim Griffith of Sunnyvale, somebody who I admire greatly. But that book really tells the story of our utter inability to get our arms around this big monopoly. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Okay. Well, thank you. And, as you can see from public comment, that Rhoda has a ton of other things that we related to this issue that could be still followed up on. I know when this was happening, that Sunnyvale mayor voiced his support for Joe Smithian, his work. So I think there were only a few mayors that stood with Joe Smithian, and our mayor in Sunnyvale did. And so a city level advocating, at the county level, Otto Lee is our supervisor advocating Joe Smithian, since this is in his district, making them know that you care about this issue, that watching, and that you want certain things done. I think that's all great.
Yeah, so I really want to thank you both again for coming and enlightening us on this topic. I learned a lot, and I wanted to give kudos to Rhoda Fry in the chat. I saved the chat so I can go back and read everything carefully. There's so much great information in there as well, and I would encourage the three of you to keep the Democratic Club of Sunnyvale informed of things that are going on and ways that we can also advocate. I mean, Linda, you just said 3 or 4 things already. Those are awesome. But as things move forward, keep us informed about in case we miss it, right? So we can.
Thank you. And this has been Rhoda, Rod, Mines, and many other people work for the last 10 years. So
yeah, yes.
And keep our community healthy. So.
Right. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. And for your suggestion about the book, the club does have a book club, a sub book club, and I think that could be a good book for the book club. All right. So now I just want to open up to other announcements. So if you've got announcements, please raise your hand and we'll go through upcoming events and things happening. Yes, Tim.
Okay, back on the bicycling topic. If any of you want to be more confident biking on the road, Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition and VTA has a series of bike education courses that are free for people to take. Bike repair courses, short 1-hour courses, longer courses. And the most advanced course will teach you basically how to ride on any road in the Bay Area just fine. I'm one of the instructors. I hope some of you will sign up and try riding your bike with all the traffic. There's actually an interesting next door conversation going on right now, but how far away from a parked car should you be when you ride your bike on the road? But yeah, so sign up, bikesiliconvalley.org/ED for education is the link that you can try. Thanks.
Great. And Tara.
So we just graduated our 2023 class from Leadership Sunnyvale. They were an outstanding group of people, and we are now taking in our folks who are signing up for this next cohort starting in September. So I know this is, we have many members that are alumni from the Leadership Sunnyvale group here in the Dems Club. So I hope that there will be some of you who will join us for this next one. As you know, or as you probably know anyway, I look for people who are already engaged in the community in order to enhance their ability to be more effective and principled in their advocacy for anything that they're after. So go online to leadershipsunnyvale.org and you'll see the sign up, and we've got an online process for you, and we look forward to seeing you.
Tara, maybe you should add a module from the quarry to the Leadership Sunnyvale curricula. I think it would be very interesting.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, on the subject of queries, something the club has been following for some time is the Eurostack, the attempt to turn part of the Amamutsan Eurostack property into a gravel quarry, which we have, the club has, supported the Amamutsan tribe and trying to prevent that from happening to their sacred grounds, and there are a lot of environmental issues. I mention it now because on Monday, June 26th, the Santa Clara County Democratic Party is having a special forum on this subject and the latest updates. And I'll send this out in an e-blast, but that's June 26th at 7 p.m. So that's something some people may want to tune into. On another subject, and maybe I can ask our Planning Commission Chair, Martin Pine, to update us on the status of the Moffett Park specific plan for Sunnyvale. And I noticed that the Mountain View City Council just approved their plan for the North Bay Shore in Mountain View. So I don't know, Martin, do you want to summarize what happened, or?
It goes to council July 12th. I mean, July 11th. I'm not sure what more of an update there is.
Well, that the Planning Commission approved it and recommended that it go to the city council, and this has, been many years in the making. So it's an important milestone.
And isn't it Martin's birthday today?
You're 2 days late.
Oh, okay. Facebook is slow.
Well, happy birthday.
Happy belated birthday.
There you go.
Thanks.
Mike, did you want to make any pitch about the book club?
I can, or Carol Weiss can. She's our leader.
Hello. Yes, we have just finished discussing a book called People Should Pick the President by Jesse Wigman. We're taking a break for the summer, and in September, there is a book we are going to discuss about Senator Lindsey Graham and his career. Yes, I know. One of our members wants to facilitate that discussion and sent us all copies. But I will be sending out a reminder that we are open for, and I've been receiving other suggestions for books. Our discussion is always open to any member of the Democratic Club, and I have duly noted California burning because it would be a prime topic for us to suggest. If you would like to receive emails about our discussions, which are every month, the third Sunday of every month, you can email me at carolrlweiss@gmail.com, and I will include you on our mail list. Thank you.
Summer beach reads.
Can I ask a question, Carol, about the book club?
Yes.
Is there a guidelines on what kinds of topics that the club's interested in reading on?
Yes, we call ourselves a politically inspired book club, and we have looked at housing, we have looked at caste issue, we have looked at the safety net in various books, at different communities, at different ways of meeting the needs of the communities. I do have a list of all the books we have read. If you would like to see them, Charlene, we do maintain it. Yeah.
There is information on the website too, listing some of the books.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll say a couple more announcements. We have Sunnyvale Pride Night coming up on June 22nd, which is downtown Murphy Avenue from 5 to 6:30 p.m. There is an Eventbrite thing to sign up, but I don't think you need to sign up. I think it's just show up. I'll try to get that into the chat as well. All right, and I believe the budget is going to City Council. The annual budget will be addressed on June 20th, which is this coming Tuesday. $500 million budget. City approves every year.
Actually, 600 million this year.
Yes, more than $500 million. There's a follow-up to the previous event through Sunnyvale Unity. It's called Community Conflict De-Escalation Training. And that is coming up June 29th, 7 to 8:30 p.m. Also, there is an Eventbrite to sign up. Put that in the chat as well. I think that is only online. All right, and then again, our summer picnic is at Ponderosa Park on July 16th. Everyone is welcome. It is a potluck. If you want to bring something, it's not mandatory. We're not checking at the door.
I thought it was the 15th, not the 16th. Am I wrong?
Oh, do I have it wrong?
It's the 15th.
15th, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, just checking.
Yes, the Saturday, which is the same Saturday that we would normally meet. Yes, the 15th. So Ponderosa Park, site number 1. I hope to see you all there.
What's the time on the picnic? From when to when?
Yeah, I didn't see that on the website.
I think we said noon at our last meeting. Gail, go
And
ahead.
it's a potluck, right?
Yes,
Were children invited?
sure.
No children.
It's a park.
You have to leave the children in the car?
Oh, no, please don't leave the children in the car.
Okay, so children are invited.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Figure out munchies.
Yeah, so I believe we said noon at the, at our last exec meeting, so we'll get that posted onto the website. And you can stay as long as you want. As long as the kids are happy. All right, and then last thing is we do have a few subcommittees. There's a diversity subcommittee. If you're interested in perhaps leading that, because it doesn't really have a leader right now. That is a subcommittee that would like to restart. If you're interested in that, you could email me or Mike. And then the Climate Action Committee, same thing. I do host it's not through the Dem Club, but I do host a coffee gathering once a month and would welcome new members to come to that. So you can also email me that, or we'll put my email in the chat. Okay, any other announcements, upcoming events? Plans for Father's Day or Juneteenth? All right. I believe we did set a date for our next endorsement meeting. It's going to be in September. Our regular September meeting will do early endorsements for the races that are coming up in the primaries. Martin, did you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, that'll, I mean, I was going to notify the candidates before we announced it, but which I have not had a chance to do yet, but I'm tentatively hoping to hold endorsement meetings for Congress, Assembly, and Supervisor in September. This is subject to change based on candidate availability, but that is the working plan for now.
Okay, sounds good. I'll just say one more thing and then we'll close early. We did host a table at the Sunnyvale Art and Wine Festival that was held 2 weeks ago. Thank you to Gail for getting us that table. And thank you to everyone who stopped by or stationed yourself at the table. It's always challenging to support a full table for the whole weekend. Somehow we did it. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Linda, for stopping by as well.
And thank you, Crystal, for serving at 3 different booths during that time too. That's amazing, woman, and thank you.
Yep. Anyway, we did talk to a lot of people, and I'm not sure we got any new members out of it, but it was good to get our name and our banner out there. People walking by, we were right near the entrance, so people coming in, people exiting saw that, hey, there's a Democratic club in Sunnyvale. at least they knew that, right? Again, a lot of people stopped by and we had some interesting conversations and some good conversations. So thank you to everybody who made that happen. All right, and with that, we'll close. Wish a happy Father's Day to the fathers. Happy Juneteenth and happy Pride Month. Thank you all. See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. It was definitely interesting today.